What if you could influence anyone, not by begging, not by performing, but by understanding the quiet forces that actually move people? Power, fear, perception, control. This isn't about charm school smiles or corporate team-building cliches. This is about cold, strategic influence. The kind of influence that built empires, toppled kings, and still operates in boardrooms, governments, and even friend groups. And who better to learn from than the man who wrote the original rulebook, Niccolò Machiavelli, misunderstood, misquoted, and still more relevant than your favorite modern guru. His book, The Prince, has been banned, burned, and worshipped in equal measure. Not because it was evil, but because it was honest. Machiavelli told the truth most people were too afraid to admit. That human nature is predictable, that power is never given freely, that those who wish to lead must stop pretending everyone plays fair. So, in this video, we will explore 3 proven strategies to influence anyone. Each is built on Machiavelli's principles, tested over centuries, and still sharp enough to cut through the noise today. No fluff, no feel-good fluffery, just psychological warfare for the modern world. By the end of this, you will not just know what to do, you will know exactly why it works and when to use it. Let us start with something Machiavelli knew would make people uncomfortable, and yet it worked every time. Influence begins with how people perceive you. And Machiavelli was clear. If you want control, fear is far more reliable than affection. Not terror, not abuse, not chaos. What he meant was this: when people fear the consequences of crossing you, they are less likely to try. Love is a soft cushion. Fear is a locked gate. Machiavelli saw it firsthand. As a diplomat in Renaissance Italy, he watched alliances crumble, betrayals unfold, and rulers fall. Often, it was those who tried to be liked who ended up powerless. Popularity is temporary, but fear, when used correctly, sticks. Take Cesare Borgia. A brutal man, yes, but one Machiavelli admired. When Borgia took over a lawless region, he sent in a ruthless enforcer to restore order. Once the job was done, Borgia had the enforcer executed in public. The message was clear: chaos would not be tolerated, and neither would unnecessary cruelty. The people feared Borgia, but they also saw him as just. That is the key. Machiavelli did not encourage cruelty for cruelty's sake. He warned against it. But he believed strongly that discipline, delivered swiftly and with purpose, was essential to leadership. In The Prince, he wrote that men are ungrateful, fickle, false, cowardly, and greedy. A bleak view, perhaps. But if you have ever had a colleague take credit for your work, or watched someone back out of a promise the moment it no longer served them, you may find he was simply telling the truth. So how does this apply now? Look at modern leadership. Managers who want to be everyone's friend often lose control of their teams. Parents who fear upsetting their children end up with no authority. Politicians who try to please all sides are often seen as weak and indecisive. They end up respected by no one. By contrast, leaders who set clear boundaries, who communicate consequences plainly, tend to command longer-lasting authority. That is Machiavellian fear, not cruelty, not hysteria, just firm, controlled presence. In negotiation, it looks like this. You state your terms and make it clear what happens if they are not met. You do not over-explain, you do not chase. You remain calm, but resolute. In personal relationships, it means you do not tolerate manipulation or passive aggression. You show through action that you are willing to walk away, that you are not afraid of discomfort. In politics, we see this constantly. Leaders who maintain a tough exterior, who project strength, often hold public confidence longer than those who waffle or attempt to appease everyone. They may not be loved, but they are obeyed. Think of how fear shapes voter perception. Strong leaders are seen as protectors. Weak leaders are seen as risks. Even in the media, fear is often used to hold attention. News outlets do not rely on love to maintain viewers. They rely on urgency, consequences. The subtle implication that if you are not paying attention, something bad might happen. It is not always ethical, but it is effective, and Machiavelli would have understood it perfectly. Of course, there is a balance. Machiavelli himself warned that excessive cruelty creates hatred, and hatred is dangerous. Once people stop fearing you and start resenting you, your influence begins to rot from the inside. He wrote, "A prince should make himself feared in such a way that, if he is not loved, at least he is not hated." That is the sweet spot. Just enough distance, just enough consequence. A reputation that says, this person does not bluff, this person does not hesitate. Modern psychology supports this. Studies show that leaders who are seen as competent and assertive are more respected than those who rely solely on warmth. It is not that kindness has no place, but without strength, kindness is ignored. So if you want to influence others, start here. Let go of the need to be liked. Build a reputation for being firm, fair, and unshakable, because people may love you for your warmth, but they will respect you for your spine. And when it comes to real influence, respect always lasts longer than affection. Machiavelli believed that influence is not a matter of strength or cleverness alone. It is the ability to move between both, to be feared and yet subtle, to be direct and yet unreadable. In his words, a leader must learn to become both the fox and the lion. The lion represents strength, boldness, the ability to overpower opposition when needed. The fox represents cunning, deception, the ability to anticipate traps and avoid them. Most people are naturally more one than the other. Some bulldoze their way through life, mistaking aggression for power. Others rely on charm and trickery, hoping no one ever calls their bluff. Both are flawed if used in isolation. The lion falls into traps. The fox gets eaten by wolves. To be truly influential, you need both. Machiavelli saw this dynamic in action across Italy's constantly shifting alliances. He praised those who could adapt their behaviour depending on the threat. One day requiring force, the next requiring silence. Those who could do both survived. Take Ferdinand of Aragon. Machiavelli admired him not just for his military power, but for his ability to constantly reshape public perception. Ferdinand always kept his subjects uncertain. He made new moves, formed new alliances, and kept his enemies guessing. He showed strength, but rarely the same kind of strength twice. This is the heart of influence. Predictability invites rebellion. Adaptability makes you difficult to challenge. So what does this look like in today's world? In politics, the fox is the one who can spin a story to the press. The lion is the one who pushes legislation through despite opposition. The best leaders can do both. They shift tone depending on the room. They speak softly when needed, but they are never afraid to bare teeth. In media, we see this in how power is framed. Public figures often present themselves as relatable, self-deprecating, human. That is the fox. But when attacked, they respond decisively. That is the lion. In business, the fox navigates office politics, reading motives, dodging threats. The lion makes tough decisions, fires people when necessary, and protects the company's direction. And in everyday life, the fox might listen more than they speak. They ask the right questions. They detect motives and stay 2 steps ahead. The lion knows when to draw a line, when to say no, when to stop being polite and start being clear. Being only the lion means you are loud and easy to read. People will learn how to avoid or manipulate you. Being only the fox makes you forgettable, clever, yes, but never quite respected. Machiavelli was not suggesting that people become dishonest. He was suggesting that the world is not fair, and those who survive must learn how to navigate it. You can be moral, but you must also be strategic. He warned that most people judge based on appearances. They will not care what kind of person you are, only what kind of image you project. This may sound cynical, but in practice, it gives you control. If others see only what you choose to show, then you are no longer reacting. You are directing. And this is crucial. True influence does not come from always being strong or always being clever. It comes from knowing which mask to wear and when to take it off. Machiavelli understood that influence is rarely built in peace. It is built in conflict. It is not about being feared all the time or being clever all the time. It is about being whatever the moment requires and never letting your opponent know what is coming next. So be the fox when traps are set. Smell danger before it arrives. Move silently and let others believe you are unaware. Be the lion when force is necessary, when your presence must be felt, when hesitation would cost you your position. Influence does not belong to those who are always kind or always ruthless. It belongs to those who can become both, depending on the game. Most people think influence is about what you know, or who you know, or being in the right place at the right time. Machiavelli saw it differently. He believed success came down to two forces, fortuna and virtù. One is chaos, the other is character. Fortuna is chance, fate, and unpredictability. The storm that sweeps away plans, the unexpected death, the betrayal, the sudden change of fortune. Machiavelli saw Fortuna as wild and feminine. She favored the bold, but only briefly. She could just as easily destroy as reward. Then there is virtù, not virtue in the moral sense, but skill, strength, will, the ability to shape events rather than be shaped by them. Machiavelli used the word to describe the fire in people who made history rather than waited for it to happen. He wrote, "Fortune shows her power where valor has not prepared to resist her." In other words, those who blame luck are often the ones who never trained for the moment it arrived. Take Agathocles of Syracuse, a man born into poverty, son of a potter, who clawed his way up through sheer brutality and tactical brilliance. Machiavelli admired him not for his ethics, which were questionable at best, but for his virtù. He took what he wanted and reshaped the world around him. He did not wait for luck. He took action and forced others to react. Modern life still works this way. People who influence others are rarely the ones waiting for approval. They act, they launch, they speak, and the world moves in response. We see this in politics. Candidates who rise quickly are often the ones who control the narrative. They do not wait for the perfect poll or the right moment. They step in, take risks, and gain visibility while others hesitate. We see this in media. The stories that dominate headlines are not always the most important. They are the ones presented with force, urgency. They set the frame, and everyone else follows. Even in day-to-day life, Fortuna rewards those who take uncomfortable action. Those who ask the question. Make the offer, apply for the opportunity. It does not always work, but when it does, it shifts the game in your favor. Machiavelli believed that influence belongs to the prepared, not the passive. His warning was clear: those who do not build defenses before the river floods will drown when it does. Fortuna will not wait for you to catch up. His advice? Build your dam before the rain comes. So how do you cultivate virtù in the modern world? You study people, you learn how perception works, you watch carefully how decisions are made, you develop the ability to act without second-guessing yourself. Virtù means taking responsibility for your image, your words, your timing. It means seeing through distractions and focusing on what truly shifts power. It means knowing that playing the long game often beats winning the day. It is not about recklessness. It is about boldness with calculation. The kind of boldness that speaks when others go silent, that makes moves before the door fully opens, that does not ask, "Is this safe?" but asks, "Is this necessary?" You cannot influence others if you are constantly waiting for the green light. Fortuna does not send invitations. And when the moment does arrive, when the tide of luck briefly turns in your favor, you must act with certainty. Not because the timing is perfect, but because hesitation kills more influence than bad timing ever could. Machiavelli saw this again and again. Rulers who waited were often destroyed. Rulers who acted, even recklessly, often survived longer. Not because they were right, but because they were bold. It is not just power that bends to the bold. It is attention, loyalty, fear, all the things that make people follow someone else's lead. So, if you want to influence others, stop waiting for the wind to change. Build your sail, then set it yourself. Fortune may be unpredictable, but virtù is a choice. And the ones who shape the world are not those who wait for influence. They are the ones who step forward and take it. Influence is not built on good intentions. It is built on perception, preparation, and power. Machiavelli never promised comfort. He promised clarity. Let us recap. Strategy 1. It is better to be feared than loved. People obey those they do not want to disappoint or provoke. If you want lasting influence, do not rely on popularity. Rely on consistency, boundaries, and consequences. Strategy 2. Be the fox and the lion. Influence requires adaptability, sometimes strength, sometimes subtlety. The truly powerful know when to shift gears. They do not play just one game. They master all of them. Strategy 3. Master fortune through cultivated skill. Luck is real, but it rewards the bold. If you act before you are ready and move when others freeze, the world is far more likely to move in your direction. Each of these principles sounds harsh when stated plainly. That is the Machiavellian way. He stripped away the idealism. He spoke directly to the nature of power, not the fantasy of it. But here is the uncomfortable truth. Much of what we admire in the world, from decisive leaders to bold innovators, is built on these exact principles. Strength, strategy, timing. You do not need to be cruel to be Machiavellian. You simply need to be unafraid to see the world as it is, not as you wish it to be. Machiavelli once said that men judge more by the eye than by the hand. They see what you show them. They rarely investigate deeper. This gives you an advantage. You get to choose what they see. So influence carefully, but influence deliberately. Do not wait to be given power. Do not wait for permission to act. Take the mask off when it helps. Put it back on when it protects you. And never forget that in the end, it is not charm or chance that shapes your fate. It is you.